Thank you. So hello, everyone, and good morning or good afternoon to you all, depending on where you're joining us. This presentation is recorded and this will be shared on social media in case if anybody missed. So as you join, please fill out this question using Mentimeter. My colleague Mohammed is going to be sharing his screen, and here is the link on chat as well. So the question for you is, what's your word or words to describe South Asian identity? So you can take a second, think about it, and then please populate this screen. We already have generic, stereotypical, brown, love, chai, and garam masala. So what is the first thought that comes to you? So can you reshare the link? Mohammed, will you please reshare the link on chat? Or Amrita? Thank you. So if you click on this, oh yes, now we have released. That's awesome. So there should be about 3 or to 5 words as choices. So don't be limited to just one. You can fill in 3 or again, don't feel like, oh, there is already a word that's listed, so I don't need to repeat the word. You can repeat the word. And then as you repeat the word, that word gets bigger and more dominant in that space. And we graphic designers love hierarchy. So feel free to keep populating throughout. And Mohammed or Amrita will be sharing this link in case someone joins late. Yes, memories. Yeah, I love this random organization of words. And as designers, we do love words, don't we? So thank you. As this will be going on, so maybe we can stop sharing our screen and we'll get right in. Indus Valley, that's awesome. Spice, scent, rooftops, that's unique and lovely. Desi, that's a common word that we call ourselves. So thank you so much, Mohammed. And would appreciate if you can close the screen sharing. Thank you. So again, you can always access this link and you can always populate. So welcome to Chai Time, SADEA's first panel discussion. So it's common in South Asia to have conversations while sipping a cup of chai. So I hope you brought a cup of chai, and here I have mine. And I'm cheating. Mine is not the Indian masala. There is Nikhil drinking his chai. And I'm drinking matcha. So that's what I love. But I hope you all have your chai as well. So because it's 1 o'clock here in Bloomington, and we want to be engaged and we want to be alive. So hopefully this chai is going to give us that energy, right? So again, it's common in South Asia to have conversations while sipping a cup of chai. So we are joyful and excited, and thanks to you all for joining. So this is for everybody, all you lovely people. Hope you're sipping, like I said, hope you're sipping a cup of chai as you listen and participate in Chai Time. So who are we? I'm Archana Shekhara, professor of graphic design at Illinois State University, and I'm joined by my amazing SADEA colleagues. South Asian Design Educators Alliance, that's SADEA, was formed in January of 2022 as a result of need. The mission of the Alliance is to create a global platform for design educators and scholars to promote and share design perspectives, design pedagogy, and design histories, specifically to South Asian experiences across the globe. The Alliance strives to address the Eurocentric canon by integrating South Asian narratives as a part of global design history. It claims to build community with South Asian educators and students by providing mentorship and growth. SADEA seeks allyship from the design community, and membership is open to all who support South Asian cultural heritage, identity, and narratives. So more information about membership will come sometime next year, and please become a member. So I'm honored to be elected as SADEA's chair, and I'm delighted to mention board member names right now. We have Shantanu Suman, who's the vice chair, an associate professor of graphic design at Ball State University. So Shantanu, he's our rock star.
Hi.
Garima, hi, thanks, Shantanu. Garima Thakur, secretary, assistant professor of graphic design at Southeastern Louisiana University. Hi, Garima.
Hi, everybody.
Amrita Datta, treasurer, social media and webmaster, assistant professor of graphic design at Indiana University. Hi, Amrita.
Hi.
So we have Neeta Verma is going to join us a little late because she said it's been snowing, and so she'll try her best to join. So she's the advisor, and also she's the associate professor of visual communication design at University of Notre Dame. Then we have Mohammad Rahman. So Mohammad is an assistant professor of graphic design at University of Cincinnati, and he leads the mentorship committee. Hi, Mohammad. Then we have Nikhil Kotke, social media and webmaster, associate professor of graphic design at Auburn University at Montgomery.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah, Nikhil's going to be a spectator and audience as well. Nikhil just had a baby, so congratulations, Nikhil.
Thank you.
So we have Ruchita Mandre, a co-secretary and a postgraduate student in graphic design at Arizona State University.
Hi, everyone.
So here we are, and then we have some colleagues. I see my ISU colleagues as well. So thanks, Annie, Katie, for joining. Anmol, you just contacted me just recently, so wonderful to see you as well. So thank you for joining. And like I said, this session is recorded. In case if anybody misses, they can always kind of like, see through on Zoom and social media. So we are going to come right into the topic, right? So brown identity, where do we fit? It's a really wonderful way of introducing all of us and SADEA. So again, we wanted to introduce SADEA by sharing our histories, narratives, and perspectives as South Asians. All panelists reside in the United States and have arrived to the country during various times. Each of us have a story of migration, assimilation, adaptation, intersectional identities, challenges, marginalization, stereotypes, biases, challenges, and successes. Some of us arrived to the United States as students or through dependency by marriage, or were born here. Each of us define brown through our own lens. We will unpack our brown identity through a South Asian perspective. As an Indian immigrant living in the United States for more than 30 years, I'm constantly questioned when I use the word Asian to define my identity. Growing up in India, we have considered ourselves as Asians and Indians, but living in the United States has made me become aware of how the dominant cultural group categorizes Asians. In this country, I'm labeled as an Asian Indian, since the word Asians is used to categorize people from the Far East. But the United States Census form asks us to check the Asian box. I cannot call myself an Indian because a person from the dominant community wrongly labeled a group of people that he believed were Indians. And as a society, we continue to perpetuate the wrong. I might be considered fair or tan complexioned for a person from Southern India, but I'm brown, and brown is a color often used in the United States for people from Latin America. Now, I'm South Asian and brown. It's not a simple check in the box. And where do I fit? Skin whitening creams are popular in South and East Asia. Beauty is defined by Western ideals. A person with fair complexion continues to be recognized as beautiful, even though there is awareness about equity and inclusion. The Indian film industry and advertising industries are dominated by this perception, and matrimonial sections continues to seek a fair complexion bride or groom. Several invasions and 200 years of British rule has left India to admire fair skin to be perfect, refined, sophisticated, and civilized. As a South Asian immigrant with brown skin, I perceive to work twice as hard, seek validation from the dominant groups to fit a predefined framework of excellence. I'm compelled to break the frame that is built and centered around a dominant group of people with power and privilege. The minority is seen as the other, unimportant and invisible. They are expected to emulate the dominant cultural group in behavior and mannerism, speak the dominant language, wear clothes in colors that are defined by the dominant group, basically assimilate as a result of cultural colonization here and in India. I seek solidarity, kindness, acceptance, and grace. So now I look forward to my amazing colleagues to share their thoughts. I will be calling panelists' names, and after each panelist talk, we will open for discussion. If you have any questions, please put that on chat, and Ruchita will be monitoring, so will Amrita and Mohammed. And again, don't forget to use the Mentimeter to join the conversation, and talk about that one word that represents brown identity. So I'm going to invite Shantanu Suman to start, please.
Thanks a lot, Archana. That was really amazing. And I know we've been having this conversation for almost 2 years now about like forming this group and thing. But every time we hear about brown identity, it's like, I mean, like each of our experiences are as nuanced as the countries that we come from, and South Asia is not just one country; it's like a group of countries. So, talking about the brown identity. So, when I think of identity in general, I mean, I think of what like memories and experiences and relationships and values that creates our like sense of like belonging or self. So I'm the first person in my family to travel outside India or to travel outside anywhere in India, come to the US. So when I left India, I had to leave part of my, what I feel I had to leave part of my identity because it was formed and framed with the experiences and relationships that I had. And over the years, I have moved across US in 3 different cities, and I've for my studies and for my work. So I feel that, like, I mean, my identity keeps evolving every place I go, and I try to form these relationships and memories. And it's based on all these relationships that I have. And it was often challenging to find the same sense of identity or community that I had in, for example, India and New Delhi or Mumbai. Because again, there are very few Indians who venture into the creative field in the like and move outside India. Most of the Indians are like coming into the engineering or medical background. But my design and my research practice has been my biggest, if I can say, anchor to my culture or to my identity, and exploring it. It has allowed me to study India from a new and a different perspective. And I'm excited to be a part of this South Asian group of South Asian creative folks who have a shared and yet a very, very unique identity. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Shantanu. So we go forward with Garima.
Hi, everybody. I feel like you both have just really, I'm just going to compound on all the things you are saying. Also, I think, it's a messy question, so it's going to be a messy answer for me because the whole idea of fitting in, I was like Googling yesterday, what does it even mean to fit in? And it says to feel that you belong to a particular group or are accepted by that group. And it's hard because I just think there is so much of dichotomy in that. As a South Asian woman, but also as like a queer identity, there is so much of dichotomy in also getting fitting in your own culture. So there is that aspect of it where you start to think about how do you hold your own people accountable, and on the other side, how do you annihilate assimilation? And those two at the same time is like a real tug of war. So you have to like start to think about all of these different identities as a form of transformation that can question, like I think about, rather than like fitting in, a lot of times like we can think about what is the function of fitting in, and maybe wonder if we can make a system by misfits that we don't need to fit in, or what does that even mean? Because it is about getting acceptance. And I think I don't know about everybody, but for myself, there's been like a difficult journey, but at the same time I'm also really privileged because I'm here. My exodus was on my own account, even though I was one of the first person to leave my family. So holding all of that dichotomies for oneself and getting anchored in that, and I think as Shantanu said, finding an anchor in the work has been really helpful. So rethinking what does it mean to fit in. But thank you for asking that question.
Thank you, Garima. I'm going to ask Amrita the same question, please.
Sure, thank you so much. I mean, it's all great what you're saying. To me, the color brown has multiple shades. And if you look at me from a Western perspective, I have always and often been considered as ethnically ambiguous until I start speaking. So being brown in America has many nuances, and disseminating that identity is kind of what I've been fighting for every single day. The current checkboard is seen from a very black and white perspective, and none of these colors represent our rich histories. So today, as an educator and a designer, I'm trying to design a new game of life where all pieces of the brown color can fit in a space with the many shades and ideas of people.
Thank you, Amrita. That was a wonderful perspective. The three of you are kind of shaping, and as this conversation is growing, that's lovely. Mohammed, you're next, please.
Everyone, I think I consider myself like always I say that I am a brown in the brown identity. I'm from Bangladesh, and everybody thinks that I'm from India in general. I mean, if it's an Indian, if it's from otherwhere, they will say I'm from Brazil, I'm from Venezuela, from other countries. I mean, I have a theory of like why they're saying this, because that's the country they know from war, different political perspectives. But nobody could guess I'm from Bangladesh. So that's why I say like I'm the brown of the browns. The other thing is I don't just have the brown identity, but also I have this post-Mughal, post-colonial, post-Pakistan, and possibly a pre-modernist identity as a designer. So, and for my background, that is also very interesting and interdisciplinary, that I am trained as an architect in Bangladesh. And then I came here in Chicago. So Chicago is the first country in USA, I mean, first city in the USA that I interacted with. And it was very inclusive. So if I'm being honest, Chicago was very inclusive in my understanding of my brown identity. And then I studied design, graphic design, and then I'm pursuing my PhD right now. And I think in my perspective, brown identity is not about like resisting every other identities. It's more about like existing, being in that like ambivalence. So I think that's how I mean, that's my perspective of brown identity, as the other brown in the brown identity. Thanks.
Mohammed, that's very powerful to say, like, to say that you're the brown in the larger brown identity. That's and then it's again very powerful when you say like, when people stereotype you and then you come out and say, no, I'm a Bangladeshi. So thank you for sharing that. Neeta?
Oh, thank you, Archana. I mean, such pearls of wisdom, from all of you. So one of the things I have on my office where I work is, what can brown do for you? And it is the famous tagline from UPS. And the thing is, while for them it might have been a color choice, for me it has a very heavy meaning. When you combine it with the gender politics, it becomes even heavier. And I think the kind of way you choose to navigate has to be keeping all those things in the back of your rudder. And that is what kind of helps you define how do you fit yourself. In terms of my work, I have never realized this, but my tendency has been to work with marginalized communities. And one of the things as I unpack my work, because it has been with marginalized communities, I think it has been an attempt to go and seek areas of influence where the whiteness doesn't predominate. And so it has been a very fundamental response. And only now I'm realizing that, when I work in youth violence, the kind of people, the kind of communities that I'm working in are extremely different than when I was working within very capitalistic modes of, working with museums and so on and so forth. So, it's how we feel we are defines what we do. And what we do defines the way we communicate. And the way we communicate is what we build, or a little bit of, ourselves that we inject into the stream of somebody else's consciousness, right? That once they have encountered a brown person, I think we readjust the way they look at brownness and the way they encounter us so that is what I would say, brown identities can be from my point of view.
I think that readjusting and relearning who we are and where we hold and where do we fit, I think was wonderful, Neeta. Ruchita?
Thank you. I think going off of the readjusting and relearning, I was just writing down my thoughts on what my identity has been, and it's been more of a personal journey for me. So I moved to the States in 2015, and this was the first time I was in a social scenario where I was an outsider. I was born and raised in Pune, and I had only lived there throughout my life. So that was the social setting which was familiar to me. I feel when in India, to be normal was to blend in. And this first thing of being in a social setting, of being an outsider and looking different and feeling different was really, uncomfortable at first. But that is what pushed me to be more reflective about what my identity is truly, and to develop a need to understand what it has been. So obviously my default was, when I moved to the States, I tried to find what the normal here is, and I tried to blend in. And that didn't work because I look different and my context of what normal was different. So yeah, it's been more of a journey for me to find a balance between the changes that have been happening in my identity, but also to stay connected to my roots in India. And for me, one way to do that is to find comfort. So I make it a point every day to start my day with a cup of chai. And I try to make it the way we make it at home, with a lot of ginger and some cardamom. And that feeling of comfort is a really great way to start my day, because it takes me through the day without feeling lonely in a new surrounding. So yeah, just to sum it up, I feel identity is about change, about relearning, about reconfiguring, but it's trying to find moments of comfort so that you feel strong about yourself.
Thank you, Ruchita. I mean, some of us are parents here too. So like, as parents, that's a totally different kind of responsibility that you have, that you're raising children in this mixed, amalgamated culture, right? So then how do you raise and still keep the South Asian identity or Indian identity or Bangladeshi identity, and still make them feel that they are American. So because they're always identifying themselves as with a hyphenated identity, they will always be Indian or Bangladeshi American. So then for that acceptance of a hyphenated identity is tough. And like how Ruchita, you were talking about, like, I drink a cup of chai, make all these in like the masala in it. So that kind of reminds me and keeps me grounded. Right. So that's really wonderful. So this is questions to the audience. I mean, if you all have a question to ask the panelists, feel free to. And I have a question as well for the panelists. So maybe I'll let the audiences ask first, and then I can ask mine. Yeah, please, sir, please raise your hand, or if you want to type your question on chat, you can, or you can raise your hand, and then you can ask a question. Nikhil, if you want to join, please feel free to jump in and share a few thoughts.
Thank you, Archana. I think it was really good listening to everyone's perspective. And I had more like a question. So I was trying to look at, okay, we are all educators, and you have been here for the longest, you and Neeta. And in this current scenario, where we're looking at is, I think somebody commented on we have a lot of brown people in IT. And as you know, there are a lot of technology company CEOs who are brown. And so you've been here for decades. And so has the perception of brown identity changed over time, over the decades?
Neeta, do you want to go first and then I can answer?
Sure. Nikhil, that's a very interesting question, because I came to New York and everybody who was brown was a taxi driver. So I was always seen as, someone who was, you're out of your, groove in a way, right? But fortunately it changed, and, Indians became the techies, right? But I think perceptions are changing with more people from South Asia coming and making an impact in professionally, right? Somehow the doctors have really populated the industry. But I think one of the things that I think Chai Time is doing very beautifully is to understand the impact of a community in a certain discipline. And this is an area that is kind of peripheral to how Indians have been perceived and Indians have been known. And I think, efforts like this will end up morphing for many people the way they look at Indian identities or the identities from the subcontinent. One of the things that I have to add very quickly, Nikhil, to what I just said is that when you are very few, when there are just a handful of you, you become the ambassador. You become the face of every Indian that the other person will think, Indians are like, or Indianness is like, right? So when you are fewer in numbers, the responsibility grows infinitely. And when you are in bigger numbers, you have the ability to kind of, have shared experiences and be able to calibrate all those experiences and come out with a more realistic whole. Otherwise, it becomes, oh, I dealt with this person and, this is what happened. And, now every Indian is, so you kind of feed the stereotype for whatever, whichever person you're dealing with. So It's a very interesting question, but yes, you're absolutely right. We are evolving. We are, really growing, and we are diversifying.
I mean, Neeta, just to piggyback on what you're saying, that's so true, isn't it? Because when I arrived to the United States in 91, so through marriage, got married really early, like as though that was the main goal for my family, was to get me married. I come from a very Orthodox family. But coming to the United States, being brown, I never realized that there was something called brown identity. So I was like, oh, I'm an Indian, I'm here, and I'm going to go to school. But then selecting art and being in the art school and being the only Indian walking around in the art school felt a little weird and awkward. People would ask all these marginalized questions and be like, are there elephants everywhere? And I would say, yeah, parking is a problem. And then the people would ask, are there ice creams? Can you find ice cream in India? Can you find chocolates in India? Again, there was such a stereotypical marginalized understanding of India, right? But then I came to upstate New York, where most of the Indians were working for IBM at that time. And then, so that was a very techie kind of town in upstate New York. And when I would say I want to study art, so people would perceive me as someone who's not intelligent enough to study the sciences. And then coming here to Bloomington, Illinois, in central Illinois, was not as diversified 28 years ago. So I've been living in Illinois for 28 years or so. Again, not diversified. Most people work in technology companies or at State Farm. When again, it was more again the perception of, oh, she's a designer. What's that? It sounds glamorous, but then really people didn't understand what I was doing. So again, the STEAM is really is not there as much. There's a lot of STEM education in the South Asian community, but STEAM perhaps is something that we all need to kind of propagate. And it starts from home, encouraging our own children to take different art classes or and really exposing them to the arts and making them understand the importance of the arts so they can find their own self-expression. And then going back to Neeta, what you were saying in terms of how because it's a small community here in central Illinois, and if the Indian community, if someone does something, right, so then it's labeled like the whole entire community is this way. So you carry that weight, that pressure, right? So that I find is a little difficult, but things are changing. And I think the country has changed in the past few years. We all know that. And there are more dialogues. And I think now is the time where the ground is fertile, where we can put these seeds. And I believe that SADEA is a seed that's going to grow in the future. So thank you so much for asking this question, Nikhil. I see a question on chat as well. Doris Houston, my friend, is here. Doris is actually the Chief Diversity Officer for Illinois State University, and she's a wonderful friend. And thank you, Doris, for joining. I know you're super busy, but you're here.
Yes, thank you. I'm so sorry. I have another meeting I have to take off to, unfortunately, in a couple minutes, but just wanted to join. And this is such an important and informative discussion.
Thank you, Doris. And I'm going to share this link to Doris later on if you have to leave. But Doris's question is, what strategies do you find helpful to collaborate with allies from other minoritized groups? So anyone wants to take that question?
I'll jump in, and I know that Neeta has a lot more experience, so I definitely want to hear from her. But one of the things is just understanding that, coming from or belonging to a minority group, and then recognizing that we are working with another minority group. That understanding in itself is a good starting point. Knowing that yes, there are limitations to what is accessible to us, the resources and all of those things. But one of the one of the most important things that I at least like to do is just listen, like listen to what people have to say, understanding before we talk about collaboration of any kind. Because we have as we were talking about like stereotypes, each culture, or every minority group has like a positive or a negative stereotypes. Uh, and if we can first get rid of those stereotypes and understand where, collaborating with people as individuals, but also understanding, getting some idea of their background, culture, and all those things, that will help with the collaboration. I think that to me is a good starting point.
Yeah,
Thank you for asking that question, Doris. Sorry.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, Garima. Please answer.
Yeah, I think I want to piggyback on what Shantanu is saying too, because I feel like, like I run a printing press that's mostly thinking about how together we can work in a Black feminist praxis, but it's really hard. And I think an acknowledgement of also what we've done wrong to each other comes a long way, because I feel like a lot of times, especially as Indians, we are considered the model minority. So we're also used against a lot of minorities. And what is just even bringing that space of acknowledgement and being like, hey, these are the ways my people have done you wrong, or these are the ways that we feed also into these spaces, and acknowledging. And I also feel like research goes a long way. There's so much of history that I'm constantly finding, especially in America, all the wrongs that have been done in so many ways to Black people, to other minorities and Native people, that I'm still I still don't know, in the same similar way that I don't fully know my own colonial history. And also as an Indian identity, that in its own self is so problematic, because we have perpetuated gender problems, caste problems, and we are so huge in other minorities, countries that are attached to us. So I feel like doing that research has really helped personally for me in collaborating with other people.
Garima, thank you for sharing that honesty. I think we all needed to hear that as well for ourselves, like where we come from and what we are dealing with in this country. What are our challenges? This whole thing that we carry, right, as a baggage. These are all baggages that we have to unpack as we live, and as we become parents, and as we talk to our students and our colleagues. And also when we become a part of the community as well. We are a part of the community, right, within our own grasp. And how do we get involved in the grassroots organizations that talk about social justice? And then how do we connect the dots with this baggage that we carry? So thank you, Garima, for sharing, and Shantanu, you as well. Neeta, would you like to take that question?
Sure. Thank you, Archana. I think one of the things that Shantanu mentioned is that idea of empathy, that I think it's very important that when one identity meets another identity, and especially if they share, experiences, then to have the empathy is very important. But by the same token, I think it's also very important to understand that somebody else's identity is not your identity, and your identity is not their identity. And so this idea of assimilation becomes a very, very important thing. What do we mean by assimilation? It's basically conforming. Conforming comes at a very steep cost of letting go of your own identity. That's what conforming is. And, to understand some of those nuances when you are thinking about this idea of, working with another community, I think you have to stop at empathy. That's it. You can't go any further, because you have to respect boundaries. I mean, this whole idea of cultural appropriation and so on and so forth, starts somewhere there, where, you start to, what is it called? The lady who she started, empathizing with her captors, right? And one of those things happens when you have a sense of loss as far as your own identity is concerned. And the point is that we all are trying to understand who we are constantly. That is a question that's like a quintessential question that you ask of yourself, especially when you are displaced, right? Culturally displaced. Your children ask of you, right? So these are questions that beleaguer each one of us. And, it doesn't stop at the brown, boundary. It goes on to almost all, existentialism is something that is so core to our, in the way we define who we are and how we should be.
I mean, you bring out this point of empathy, right? So I usually say that design is a philosophy of life where designers must empathize with diverse communities of people we serve. I mean, again, we are all designers, we are design educators. As we kind of define that in our own work, when we collaborate with community partners or clients. So how do we begin to empathize? And how do we even teach that to our students in the classroom, right? So we need to, because students see us as role models, right? When we go up there and start talking, so they, like, especially a student of color, like we are all people of color, and student of color will be like, oh, I can be that person if this person has made it, right? So again, how do we bring that envelope of empathy into the classroom with our students? So I'm tying it back because we are all design educators here. So anybody else wants to contribute?
Just
Ruchika?
add to this a bit. I think it's also about being at ease with who you are and having a different positionality. That's what my research has been about so far. And I feel, especially as designers, we all come to design the process with some biases. And if you know that beforehand, you would be doing good. Or that kind of addresses ethics that go with these complex systems that we are trying to, step a foot in. So to me personally, it's also about knowing where you're coming from and being comfortable with your identity, your perspectives and worldviews. And while collaborating, I feel it's great sometimes to be an outsider because you see things the way others might probably not see it. So just to know that you have a different perspective it's going to help the process. So yeah, just those two things.
I mean, we have to be ready to learn and also unlearn, right? So, and then looking at it from the outside with a totally different perspective, again, we bring in with our own cultural lens, and then the lens has the right now at least in this conversation is brown. So how do each one of you, if we have time, we have about 10 minutes or so, how do you break down these norms, or how do you break down these cultural barriers that when you go someplace, whether it's a conference or in the classroom, or whether you're talking to people or at the grocery store, or you're talking to your children or whatever that is, how do you break down these norms of who you are and your identity? Because it's very easy to be in a heterogeneous culture. So everybody is like us, everybody talks the same language, we have to speak in English. Maybe you speak your language at home trying to be like, oh, I need to preserve my language. And I tell my children, if you don't speak Kannada, then our language is dead, nobody's going to practice it anymore, right? So I look up to you all to kind of bring that culture, take that culture to the next level or whatever. So how do you keep up with that? How do you embrace your brown identity, and how do you empower yourself being brown?
I'll jump in. I feel that's not a question for us. It's a question for them. It's really a question for them, whoever that them is. And we could be them also, right? When we encounter other cultures. So I really feel that, it's almost a consciousness, and that has to be practiced by each, individual and community and society and nation. So it kind of goes up, but it is a question that has to be asked, and it has to be infused in our educational system. And it is a culture that needs to be imbued in the way we encounter the other, whatever that other is. That idea of respect, the idea of, and to be quite honest with you, I mean, I think twice before saying this, but we have grown up trying to be taught, and when we say we, I mean that part of the world, the global South, in a way, we grow to embrace, and we are taught to embrace, and that is something that is a part of our culture. It's a part of our education. It's the how we are taught to embrace, not as someone who's lower, but someone who opens their arms to somebody else. But there are also educational ways where you teach hierarchy. A lot of us practice that hierarchy in our classrooms, right? We convert the teacher and the taught as someone that I am the one who's going to teach you. So we build the hierarchy to kind of grow in circles, right? To understand that you need to encounter the rest of the world as a circle as opposed to top down. I think that is where, one will have to look at this question from.
I think the word also is acceptance, so acceptance and respect. In the end, it comes down to empathy, acceptance, respect, learn, unlearn, and this hierarchical way of thinking to kind of disrupt that and to really empower each one of us. So I don't know whether we call ourselves as change makers. I'm not sure, but we can be change makers as we pursue these dialogues. These dialogues are challenging, hard, but then it's important that we need to have as a society, as a community, I mean, Nita, you're sharing all this wonderful wisdom and looking at a nation. So how do we change as a nation, and how do we embrace each other for whoever we are, whether we are perfect or imperfect? Again, that's not really important. But as people, how can we, as designers, design for the good or design for society's awareness and whatnot? So anyone else would like to jump in?
Nita, thank you so much for saying that. I really, really super appreciate that. Yeah, I really, I think a lot that the brown identity, like all of you said, has also been given to us by someone else. So to embrace it is also really strange because I feel like I can't escape it. Like it's something that I can't escape. And I think one thing that keeps coming up for me is to abolish parts of it, to be honest, because I also have a lot of shame in my identity, not because of the other people, but also the shame that my own people bring into it. We're a very collectivist culture, which is amazing, but we're also super casteist. We're also super there's so many problems in our own identity that I feel like for me it's also a moving target. It's about coming to a point where am I aligned with my ethics and values? And some of it can come through brownness and some of it won't because I really can't escape it. So Nita, I super appreciate what you said. I feel like every time you speak, I'm like, let me pay attention. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm kind of similarly, I'm just kind of listening to all the words of wisdom. And what struck me was Nita's comments about, we tend to look at, we should be looking at it not top down, but circular. And what occurred to me was accents. When we hear a British accent, it's considered cool. About a few years ago, they were doing all British accents on advertisements. Australian accent is super cool, but Indian accent is looked down upon. And so maybe kind of listening to everyone and then putting it in the perspective of us as designers. So maybe we stop looking at Indian accent as something that we need to get rid of and embrace it. And so similarly, thinking out loud, design-wise, if you look at the design that is is there a design, first of all, like coming out from Southeast Asia? Is there an identity? Are we trying to, if you look at news networks and all the design that's been happening in India, does it have its own identity, or is it trying to go more like the Western style? So what does that mean for us designers? Should we try to like promote more of our brown design? So those are the questions that come up to me.
I mean, that's great questions, Nikhil. I mean, like looking at our own vernacular, looking at our own identity, right? And looking at what's happening in India in terms of the adoption of Swiss identity as theirs, like at least in the beginning, which I think perhaps that was a great start. But then again, readdressing identity and looking at our own culture. So that's great. Mohammed, you had something to say, please.
I think Nikhil took my time over there. Thank you, Nikhil, for saying this, because I was thinking about two words that to me it's a little problematic. One is like in a way, which is acceptance. So somebody needs to accept something, for example. I personally never think like that. I don't really care if somebody accepts or not. I think that is how we demolish that, like a historic hegemony, or for example, like a dominance, right? When Shantanu was talking about like listening to people, empathy, I think that's a very nice way to demolish that. Some sort of synthesis, synergy can be made, like what Nita was saying. Also, I think we always say like our brown identity or our Deshi identity, these are like more problematic, or people doesn't understand, people don't understand it. I don't think it's a problem. We have to say this as in a different term. We can say this is more like a nuanced version of things. For example, these are all acceptable. If you don't like it, I don't like yellow, somebody likes green, that's fine. There is no problem in this. So I think these are more like we have to narrate it. Our storytelling has to be a little different to make it more powerful and more, I think, more inclusive in a way. So that it's not like we are trying to dominate in a way so that, yeah, you have to understand this because this is a problem. I don't think this is a problem. I like rice and curry, that's fine. You like pasta, that's fine too. I think in that way, because we are like very post-colonial syndrome, like we are always having this political boundaries of like how we see things and how we are being seen. So we always try to think of, okay, this is modernist, this is contemporary. I think we were much more contemporary. In our culture, like 1,000 years ago, we have institutions over there. I don't know what happened later on, and like how we lost our identity, like that predominant identity, and now we are thinking of like, oh, we have this problem. People are not accepting this. I don't think it's a problem. People will accept it in a way if we say it very differently, if we narrate it differently. So this kind of SADEA, this kind of initiatives are very important to raise those voices. And also there will be mistakes, there will be some little confusion, complexities, but I think this needs to be heard somewhere, because otherwise it will be a tabula rasa. We are trying to think of something which is very like a clean slate. But I think this is fine. Like what we are saying is absolutely like fabulous. And there should be more encouragement to say things like that. And we should also debate, discourse, and having dialogues. I think that will change the whole narrative. Thank you.
Thanks, Mohammed. Having dialogues, I think that's the first step, right? That's the first step to understand an audience. I have a couple people in the audience as well, Anmol and Annie and Katie. If you want to jump in and say anything, feel free to. Anmol, you said you're joining all the way from India. That's awesome. And it's so late in the night. Wow, you're dedicated now.
Honestly, when Vinicius told me about this initiative, I was so excited because I've seen a lot of designer maybe kind of groups where South Asian designers have come together, but design educators it was so wonderful to get to know about that, because I really felt like I don't know what to do when I began my journey, which was a year ago. And this is great. Oh wow, that's awesome. Bhilai is super close by. And I think honestly, all of you have, I think, way more experience, and just hearing your experiences and knowledge and all of that has really it's very interesting how this has probably been going on for a long time. Like Archana, you're saying 30 years, Neeta has been probably longer. So this is very interesting for me, how I think in India too, I think I've always just not understood being put in a box at all, which is why non-binary became something came very naturally, instead of female or male or anything. And then similarly, even here, my surname was Srivastav. Everybody would be like, oh, so what are you? And I'd be like, I'm human. I don't know. Like, I'm just that. And it was the same in the US. So you're brown, and I'd never heard of those words before. And I was like, I'm brown. What does that even mean? Like, I'm a color. So, and then suddenly it became, oh, Desi, and some actually American Indians or people who had been living in the US for a while would explain those terms to me, that no, we are this. And I'd be like, I guess, I don't know if you say so. So those boxes have always been very interesting to me. But I still, it doesn't mean that I don't find value in, coming together as a group like we have right now. I absolutely love my background. I love where I'm from. And I really appreciate this discussion. It's amazing. And I think, I guess I'll just end it with, my thesis was similar, I guess, what we've been talking about. It was to do with cultural identity, my own identity and all of that. And one of my projects was called, the thesis ended up being called Connecting the Dots, which I think, Archana, you were saying as well for a while. And then one of the projects was called Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, because that really was my learning from all of this, which means the whole world is a family. And my experiences in all different parts of the world, wherever they've been, has always just told me, I've never seen your race or color. And maybe that's just, we all, I think, in the end, kind of are like that. We're not seeing race and color. We just end up seeing the kind of person you are. So that's what matters. But thank you so much for letting me join this discussion. It was really amazing and very empowering, and lots of knowledge.
Yeah, thank you, Anmol. I hope, living in the country as a person of color, we want people to see our color. So in that way, we want acceptance sometimes, because I know, Mohammed was talking about, I don't care if people don't accept me, I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to be there for who I am because I believe in myself, right? But then there are times where, again, I have personally struggled, maybe because I live in a small town and I'm the minority here. So minority over minorities, but now it's become a majority, right? So it's like, so again, with all that struggles, again, things have changed. The country has changed in the past 30 plus years. It was a different country back then, and it's wonderful that everybody finds their own space. So as we create platforms for dialogues, and then you brought up the words Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. I remember doing a project about that for my Diwali cards that I send. It was my very first project. So just talking about that, and even Neeta also talked about, we think of ourselves as a one global family. So how can we kind of bring in and change a nation, right, with that kind of attitude? So that's amazing. So I'm looking at time. It's 2:05. Annie and Katie, if you have anything, please share on chat as well, or feel free to talk. I know both of you, you're my colleagues. I
just want to say thank you for this invitation, but also one of the words that I don't know in the menti.com, I would love to see the words, because the one I just added was warm, because I think that's how I feel coming into this community, this discussion, is I feel warm. It's like a family. And I mean, as a Thai American, it's kind of me struggling with my own identity and trying to grasp my own culture and connect with it. I feel so late in the game doing that. I think I really appreciate this and having a community sort of like this. So thank you.
Thank you, Annie, for sharing. And so wonderful that you could join. And here is the question. What's your word or words to describe South Asian identity? And here we are populating it. So that's amazing. So if you haven't had the chance to populate this, please go to the chat and there's a link. We would love to listen or hear and what you have to say. So amazing, awesome. So any other last minute thoughts as we wrap up?
One thing that I wanted, go ahead, Garima.
No, I'm just putting it in chat. If anybody wants to give us your contact, please give us the contact. Go.
I just wanted to add one thing, listening to everyone and whatever we've discussed so far, I think it's on us to change the narrative with everything that's been going on. For a long time, we have been seen as a third world country, and even here, even if we embrace it as a global community, people from here have that idea about the first world nation and the third world nation. So I think a lot of work has been done in art to kind of talk about the rich culture and the rich morals and values of that part of the world, but a lot of work has not been done in design. And I think it's our job as design educators to kind of bring that out and change that narrative so everyone can accept us, even if we try to accept other people.
Amrita, I was actually gonna say almost exactly the same thing, that it's a work in progress, and that what we are trying to do here is just have that conversation, dialogue, or have more such opportunities where we can, I don't want to say change the narrative, but it's like define or tell our stories or present about who we are. And going back to what Mohammed was saying about, we used to be so culturally rich, who knows what happened. I guess, one of the things that based on my research I found out is that we had a rich history. We still have a very rich history, but our history was rewritten by people who ruled the South Asian countries. So there is a lot of research already out there, and I think all of us in our own different ways, at least the ones who are researching about our own country or cultural background, are trying to present that in different conferences. Speaking of different conferences, we have already presented at least at one conference earlier this year. Next year in February, some of us will be getting together at CAA, and then we'll be presenting there as well. So again, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. I think all of us are trying to do this in our own way. But yeah, the work, it'll continue happening.
Thank you, everyone. And I just saw Mohammed's chat, what he says about name. What's in a name, right? So that's a big question. I've been doing this project actually with my students in China. And then also I did this project just recently in my type class. What's in a name, right? We all ask ourselves when we introduce ourselves to others, and people are like, how do you say it now? How do you pronounce? Can I shorten it? Can I do this? Or can I call you Archie? Or can I call you A? Or can I call all these things? I'm sure you all have kind of have undergone. Well, anyway, so thank you so much for joining. It was an amazing afternoon, a lovely discussion, and this is recorded, and we will share it soon on our social media, and then also on the website as well. So thank you again, and you all have a wonderful afternoon, and good night, Anmol. So sleep well, and we'll catch up. Take care, everybody.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
I was going to leave, but everyone, this was wonderful.